Hey guys, this is John and I'm playing dimICC in the 5-minute pool on ICC. Familiar opponent, played this player many times. Let's play the Sicilian. And I'll go e6 on move 2. Been playing a lot of con in recent years, so let's stick to that. e6, a6. Okay, knight f6, just attack the e4 pawn. Trying to figure out what line I want to play here. I think I'm just going to play queen c7. The standard move, a lot of times white will play a3, yeah, to rule out any bishop b4 business. And we might get a popular Maraxi position. Let's go b6 first. Lots of room for hedgehog maneuvering in this middle game. These moves are all standard. Knight bd7 coming next, so you put up these pawns all in the 6th rank, controlling 5th rank squares. Okay, let's play this way, rook c8. Now I'm going to go queen b8. So typical idea for white would be knight b3 with the idea a4, a5. Now that I'm able, I'm going to play bishop d8, put the bishop on c7. This gives d5 more force if black is eventually able to make that pawn break work. I think now I'm going to send the h-pawn up the board. So bishop g1 kind of prophylaxis by white, defending the h2 pawn. That takes a sting out of any d5 push in the future. But black can enlist the help of the h-pawn. h5, h4, h3. Try to weaken white's kingside. This rook, I'm probably going to send to e8. That's usually the best square. You would think it'd be d8 in these positions because black does have their eye on d5, but e8 is usually better so that after d5 is played and you get the trade of the e-pawns, the e-file can become open for this rook to utilize. But for now, let's just see how dimICC reacts to the h-pawn push. He's pausing to think. So white is better on the queen side. Typically, white wants to play over there. But my opponent has not played that knight b3 move I mentioned. Wow, and now bishop right back to f2. So that stops h4, but does allow d5 with that attack on h2. Maybe he figures that now that my knight doesn't have access to this square, it's not as big of a deal. Still, though, yeah, I like the look of d5, so I'm definitely thinking about going for it. Maybe rook e8 first, though. So d5, ed takes. Could also take with the knight. Probably knight takes. Let's play rook e8 first. I think I feel a little bit better with the rook positioned here. This does give white a chance to go bishop g3 if he wants. Try to put the bishop on the same diagonal as my bishop. But no, b5. It's a bit surprising as well. First instinct is just to close it up with a5. And I think I'm going to do that, yeah. Because this leaves this nice square on c5 for my knight to go to. Here, okay. Don't necessarily have to take that. Because if I take and then play, say, knight e5, white is probably looking to play knight b5. Could just play queen a8. Yeah, that looks simple. I got e7 guarded, so no worries there. Now I'm threatening to take twice on c6. And if this knight retreats to d4, d5 with my queen being on a8 is even better than before. Okay, bishop h4. So if I take twice, knight b5 is coming at the end of the line. I have knight c5 though, perhaps. Then my kingside gets a little weak. Okay, I see your point. Now I'm still going to do it. And then maybe just play a rook move after knight b5. So if knight b5, maybe you like rook cd8. That looks reasonable. And if knight takes d6, I can move this knight away and hopefully attack that pin knight on d6. c5. So bishop b5 is the idea. I missed this. It might be good. I'll get a couple pawns, though, for the exchange, even if I have to sack the exchange. Just think about the best way to do this. I think I have to take this pawn. Yeah, I think dropping the queen back and allowing the capture on d6 doesn't look so good. Yeah, so let's do this. Bishop b5, queen a8, bishop takes f6, knight takes f6. And now e5. My opponent just surprising me all over the place here. Okay, but again, I'm getting lots of pawns for my trouble. I'm just going to take bishop b5. Let's bring the queen all the way back, I think. Pre-move this capture. At the very end of the line, white might play queen into h6, but I don't think I'm that torn up about that. As long as I can cover f6. f6 is the key. So knight e4, king g7 looks okay. If queen h6 right now, probably I should play f5. I'm thinking just, again, to keep this knight at bay. King g7. King g7, knight takes d6. I have rook d8. Importantly. What about king g7, queen f4? Okay, well, I gotta play this, I think, so let's not dwell over it too much. I think f5. f5, check, knight g6. Actually, I'm not sure about that now. Bishop d8 drops. f5, queen g5 check, knight g6, knight f6. I'm going to try that. Okay, I know white's going to get some play on the king side, but we'll find out what happens. Also possible for white to take on d6. But no, white's going to go for the active option. Let's go here. Now knight g5 I'm expecting. I missed something though. Yeah, definitely missed that. But I think I might have this move. So if knight takes e6, I can take with the rook. Very important. If rook f8, knight takes e6 was strong. But white can do that. That's good. Very strong move right there. Okay. Yeah, this is not going to work out too well for me. Try to coordinate as best we can here, but that was a nice sequence by my opponent. Hustle time. I hope I just don't lose. Okay, can pick up h5 with check. Or that, yeah, that's looking bad. Yeah, rook e8. Okay, I'll resign that one. Nice game by my opponent. They played well with the initiative. So I missed a couple moves in a row, c5 in particular. c5 followed by e5. White played excellently with the initiative after that. I thought white's idea was to go knight b5 here. c5 wasn't on my radar at all. Sacrificing a pawn, but opening the way for the bishop. So I took this way. And I was thinking about just sacking the exchange in this circumstance. Bishop b5, queen moves away to, say, a8. Bishop takes f6, knight takes f6, bishop takes e8. Even there, white might be better. I do have two pawns for the exchange. But e5 really threw me for a loop. e5, knight takes here. Because white's giving another pawn, so now material-wise I'm doing very well. I'm actually up a point in material in this position, but knight e4 was tough to deal with. I couldn't solve the problems. One major issue, I think, is that my queen is so far away from the kingside action where everything is occurring. King g7 to cover f6. If I play bishop d8, I lose the d6 pawn. If I play queen d8, there's knight takes c5, or even rook takes c5, perhaps. Actually, maybe that's not working. Maybe queen d8 is playable here. Because if the capture occurs on c5, I can actually just take. I thought my queen would be pinned down the d file, but that's not the case. Queen d8, I guess just knight takes d6, most likely. So king g7, queen f4, f5. Yeah, my king was extremely exposed here. This seems accurate by white. Check. I thought white would play knight f6 instead, hitting the rook and also h5. I was going to go rook h8 and give the h-pawn, try to bail out with my king towards f8. But check here, knight g5. And again, you can see the problem with having my queen so far away. If I could somehow play like queen e7, let's say, get my queen to the e7 square, offer a queen trade, and guard f7, then black I think is fine. But I didn't have a good way to deal with queen takes f7 and also knight takes e6. Originally I was tending rook f8, but knight takes e6 is painful. And against this, yeah, knight takes f7 is also good. So it seems like in this position, no matter what I do, I'm in trouble. Knight e5, I guess I can just play f4. I do have bishop d8 then. Maybe knight e5 is playable here. Knight e5, queen h6. Looks pretty bad for black too. Yeah, and I think here I'm busted. I think once I lose the knight, I also lose e6. I'm down, what, 1 point of material, but my king is open and I have all these weak pawns. It should just be lights out. White's king is extremely safe. And the rest was pretty accurate by white. I was just desperately trying to avoid getting checkmated, but had to give it up at the end. It's just mate in 2. So the opening I felt went okay. I even got this maneuver in that's typical for these positions. Bishop d8 to c7, set up a battery on the diagonal. h5. It seemed to me a concession for white to play bishop g1 and then back to f2, but maybe not. Maybe it's not so easy to take advantage. I passed up the opportunity to play d5 right here in favor of rook e8. Like, a couple of these moves just look wrong to me, what white did. Like, b5 usually is not a good decision by white, but in the complications, white proved that they had a better grasp of the position than I did. So I'll be especially curious what the computer says, like, right around here, after b5. Maybe I didn't play it correctly. So let's put on the engine. So this is one of the critical lines against the Khan. So white playing c4, because notice that black hasn't committed to knight f6 yet. I've not played that move. As happens a lot in other lines of the Sicilian, black will play knight f6 early on and compel white to play knight c3. But in the Khan, you're playing a couple pawn moves first, and therefore white hasn't had to put their knight on c3. So they can try for this setup with pawn on c4 and knight in behind it on c3. And I played one of the standard ways, queen c7, and then d6, bishop e7, b6, bishop e7, knight bd7. This is a familiar setup. It looks very passive for black, but black's position has quite a bit of counterattacking potential. Rook c8, all normal, b4, queen b8. So the queen is not very well placed on c7, especially in view of some knight d5 tricks that white can sometimes utilize. So just withdrawing it to b8 is a good idea for black, unleashing the rook on the file. Also preparing for this Saemisch maneuver. It's called bishop d8 to c7, so which I did right now. Okay, so bishop to g1. I go h5. Could also hold off on the h5 move, like rook fe8 is the top suggestion of the computer. Although I will say in these hedgehog positions, I've noticed the computer isn't all that helpful. Certainly when the game gets sharper, though, we'll have to pay close attention to what the computer says. Yeah, so the engine likes bishop f2, stopping h4. Could just be a good reaction. I mean, it does challenge me. It basically says, okay, if d5 is not good for you, then h5 just looks like a ridiculous move now, because I can't go h4 without losing the pawn. So let's just check d5. d5, okay, c takes. Yeah, bishop f4, bishop e3. Take here. Big advantage for white after takes. This is sometimes the problem with the d5 move, is that the position can open up favorably for white. Like white might land a knight on f5. Also the a6 pawn can be loose, like after a trade like this. There's bishop takes a6 if white wants. So I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't have played h5 so soon. Maybe in this exact position I should defer to rook fe8, keep h5 in reserve. So perhaps I got the move order a bit off. So bishop f2, rook fe8, and now b5. So striking with b5. I close it up with a5 because I don't want white to use this b5 square. If I take, one of white's knights can jump in, like so. Also, if I leave the tension, white might take on a6 and still use the b5 square. So close it up. Yeah, knight c6. And here I did not take because it felt like after this capture that white would get knight b5 in next move with pressure here and here. So queen a8 looks correct. Yeah, and now bishop h4. That was a pesky move. That limits my mobility with this knight because I always have to reckon with bishop takes f6 if I move it away, and my pawns get damaged. Yeah, I don't like this position, especially if the way I played in the game just turns out to be good for white, which it appears to be. If my best move is to move my king here, like king h8 or king f8, it feels like something has gone wrong. So I think the culprit might have been right around here, this h5 move. These hedgehog positions can be delicate. They can be subtle. I mean, the margin of safety for black looks pretty high because the position is closed, but we got to remember that black is operating with a serious space deficiency. So the onus is often on black to, at some point, demonstrate that their counterplay is enough. So let's go back to that position we were looking at. So I tried the critical move, capturing on c6 twice, looking to win a pawn. But yeah, c5 is a very nice shot, opening the way for bishop b5. And as I said, I felt like I had to take this pawn because the capture on d6 is threatened. I really don't think I can ignore it. So I took this way. I mean, taking this way is even worse because that opens up the white queen and the rook on d7. Also, knight takes allows this, and there's the direct shot against the rook. Maybe I have some way to complicate with knight b3 somewhere, but it didn't look promising. Also, remember, removing that knight from d7 allows that bishop takes f6 motif I was mentioning. So take here. Yeah, and now e5. That was surprising because this just looks pretty good as well. Bishop b5, queen b6. I probably would have played this move, though. And here again, e5 is good. Let's just go back to this position. So e5 right away. Yeah, I guess this move is serving as a clearance sacrifice. It allows white's knight to reach e4 after that capture on f6 coming up. And again, I think I have to take it. I don't think I can ignore this. My alternative would be to move this knight, but then bishop b5 is even stronger. And if I take with the pawn, once again, the d-file becomes open. This becomes more of an issue. So knight takes e5, bishop b5, queen moves away. I guess queen b6, yeah, probably is stronger. I wanted to keep my queen on the same diagonal as white's king, like maybe in the hopes that knight takes f3 down the line will be a shot that could get me back in the game, but it's possible that this is just better. Yeah, rook b1. White doesn't even have to take the rook right away. It's an unpleasant position to play for black. So now we get a semi-forced line. Bishop takes f6, damaged my pawns. And then white cashed in on the exchange. Even here, computer says white doesn't have to take it, and knight e4 is good. But instead, rook takes on e8, knight e4. Okay, king g7. So somehow, according to the evaluation of the computer, I'm back too close to equal, but I couldn't figure it out in the game. I was mentioning queen d8 right here, right? So trying to hold f6. I was speculating that maybe knight takes d6 was good. Queen h6. Yeah, that's also looking strong. Threatening knight takes f6, threatening the capture on c5, because now the rook really is pinning the d6 pawn. So even an attempt to get my queen back in the game looks like it might fail. So king g7, queen f4, f5. Better is queen d8, so again trying to defend here. But I just thought always white could take on c5. Queen G3 check, King F8, F4. What about just simply something like this? This looks kind of scary for black, but given the position I had in the game, this was a better option probably. F5 on the other hand, so after check, knight blocks, queen check, king G8, yeah, knight G5. I think I'm very close to lost because I was not able to solve the issues with these two pawns and the knight. Knight E5, that does take the sting out of knight takes F7, knight takes E6, like I was talking about, but yeah, queen H6 looks pretty nasty. Just the queen and the knight in close proximity to my king. Not looking fun. H5 always hanging. Yeah, that's probably losing for black. But again, might be better than what I did. I did this. I missed knight takes F7. Nice little shot by white. And now my position is coming apart at the seams. Yeah, just too ragged. The material's not so bad. Only down 1 point of material, but that poor king safety plus the weak pawns, I think it's just a matter of time here. And it was literally a matter of time for me because I had none of it. Don't think the rest was super interesting. Just kind of flailing around and eventually losing. Okay, so what conclusions can be drawn from this? Well, this is a fun setup to play for both sides, but there is risk, especially for black. I mean, you have to know what you're doing in this setup. You get sort of a cramped position where you're putting all your pawns on the 6th rank, controlling those 5th rank squares. If you know how to counterpunch, you can do okay. I actually learned how to play these positions from this book by Grandmaster Sergey Shipov, 2-part series on the Hedgehog. It's a tremendous couple of books. And I was trying to utilize a couple ideas in that book, namely the Saemisch Maneuver, putting the bishop on C7 to lend more force to D5, and also the H-pawn push, looking to go H5, H4, H3, weaken white's king. But it seems to me that H5 was mistimed. I think I played that too early. I should probably play Rook F8 instead. Really, though, I got to hand it to my opponent because my opponent just categorically outplayed me in this game and had a better grasp of the complications for sure, as evidenced by the C5 and the E5 moves. I was just always on the defensive after that. Interesting game. So my recorded score, the games that I've recorded in Blitz with the standing desk, I am standing right now, just to remind you. I'm just doing a little experiment, seeing how I play standing versus sitting down. But I'm half out of 3 in the games that I've recorded so far. Hopefully that trend turns around. I did win one game that I didn't actually record for YouTube, but hopefully I can turn this trend around and make it a positive score at some point. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this game, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Talk to you guys later. Bye.